you have an opportunity to graduate and work hard. So that was kind of the nice thing. But being a 23-year-old teaching is like, 30-year-olds in the classroom with 17-year-olds. It's like,
yeah.
oh.
Yeah. Well, that was the storefront too. So.
Oh yeah.
In Warman, we were part of the start of that. Actually, I was there when that started.
Yeah, I'd love to teach there. That's like something that I'd be interested in.
Yeah.
That at risk, and then those
adults that
yeah, or
generally
coming back at
motivated.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, but there's so much more right now too with we're seeing such an online presence that what was sort of thought of how are we going to do this, now there's many models and you're living proof of them, and so am I with the Flex Ed. So I mean, it's
100%. Hey, yeah. There's that flexibility option now that they have too with life and being
wherever you are.
Yeah. I know when Dean was talking about, he went to that Swift Current one that to try and get some ideas how they've modeled theirs, and I'm like, tell me everything. Like, I just love that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it is 1:00. Welcome everyone to the Committee of the Whole for Monday, April 19th, 2021. We are on Zoom again, and it looks like we probably made the right decision with all the things happening out there and some of the provinces where they're at. So I now call this meeting to order, and I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Tooley.
I move to approve the Committee of the Whole agenda for the April 19th, 2021 as presented.
Seconder? Councillor Johnson, any additions? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. We will move down to administration reports, and we'll start with City Manager Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have anything to come forward to council as items, but I do have a few comments and maybe some updates. One of the major undertakings this month was the strategic planning session that was held on April 8th. I do look forward to working with Mayor and Council on implementing their initiatives over the next term, and possibly by next month Committee of the Whole, we will have a report from the facilitators to bring forward to Council. The provincial budget was released on April 6th, and as I mentioned to Council, with minimal impact on the City of Warman finances or programs. Part of the provincial budget was the setting of the educational property tax mill rate for the province, and for the residents of Warman, this actually had a negative impact because we saw more growth, more of an increase in the market than what the rest of the province had. The RFPs for the engineering services for the design of Lift Station 3 is closed on April 9th, and a report will be coming forward in May. The city manager, myself as a city manager, and fire chiefs from the region will be holding a meeting to discuss the ambulance service and some of the options for consideration, and then we'll hope to do that in May. Also, with the nice weather, we are seeing an uptake in the number of calls regarding speeding and noisy vehicles. We ask residents if they see speeding or any other illegal activity to report it to the RCMP, as the residents are the RCMP eyes and ears in making Warman a great place to live. Earlier this month, the manager of planning and I had a virtual meeting with representatives from CN, as well as our engineer Chris Cunningham from AECOM, regarding whistle cessation in the city to see where everyone's at. It would seem CN is getting close to where they are comfortable with all the infrastructure that we have put in place or will be putting in place, including signage, road markings, fence, slopes, etc. So we're looking forward to getting a response from CN, so then we can move forward on that initiative. With the winter weather, we have noticed that more people are anxious to get out in their yards earlier than usual to perform spring cleaning and lawn care. As a result, we opened the organic collection site next to the Diamond Arena earlier this year, so the residents could dispose of their organic waste. Unfortunately, we are seeing people putting plastic bags inside and outside the bins, which is not permitted, and it's unfortunate to see that happening because it is a benefit to the community to have that service there. Also, with the nicer weather comes the annual influx of door-to-door salespersons. We have heard from residents inquiring about the activity and why it's allowed, or is it allowed, and it is. However, the provincial government has established COVID guidelines that must be followed by the door-to-door sales. So some of them are no direct contact between the salesperson and the public. 2 meters of distance must be maintained at all times. There will be no sharing of equipment, pens, flyers, etc. Also, there should be contactless forms of payment are required, and also the salesperson must practice proper COVID hygiene and wear a mask at all times. So if salespeople are not practicing these guidelines, we would ask that residents contact the provincial business response team and the COVID response team, and the number there is 1-855-559-5502, and report those incidences. We've also received inquiries about garage sales, and the provincial government has advised that they're the same regulations as they were last year that will be in effect, and they can certainly get those guidelines off the provincial government website. And so that's my report, Your Worship. If there's any questions, I'd certainly be happy to try to answer them.
Mayor Philipchuk, you're on mute.
Thank you. 2 meetings on the same house, so thank you for that. Any questions from anyone? Councillor Beck.
Yeah, Bob, I'm just wondering, let's say like the guidelines for salespeople this year, could we post that up on our social media page? Just to kind of get that, let's say that information out to residents. Like that certainly might help with reducing like the number of phone calls coming in, and maybe some confusion out there too. So just wondering on that.
Yeah, we can certainly will provide the link to the provincial guidelines for the door-to-door sales for sure.
And I'll comment about that. I contacted Bob that I had somebody to come without a mask, and I let them know what the standards were, and they left sheepishly, and I let them know that I'd be reporting it too, that they can't be going around and selling merchandise in our community that way. So one other one that came up as you were talking there about the plastic bags is that maybe we need to get into more of a reusable container instead of them even putting stuff in plastic bags. And I know I've done that, and I will never go back, which is some of those old big plastic bins, fill it up, take it there, dump it, and it's done. And so I've got my bin back again, and so I'm using zero plastic. So just maybe something that just came to me as you were talking, and then seeing all those plastic bags left there, which, is a waste of plastic, number one, and it's not following the rules, which makes everything inside that bin basically end up garbage because it's all that plastic in there. So if we could get that push towards reusable bins, and those plastic bins, we all have extra ones around the house, seem like they do the job, or old planter pots seem to work too. So just something to throw out there. The one last one I'll mention too, you mentioned CN, but on a side note of CN, driving by there, and this is not tied to your report, but I just want to mention, I don't know their responsibility for looking after their presence, because really they've turned that into a pretty messy area if I was living on South Railway. And I'm pointing that out as something that maybe we look into a little bit more. And that was just driving around the community and saying, when did this turn into a storage yard, unfenced storage yard? And so just wanted to bring that up as something to follow up on, not to really comment right now. Councillor Tooley.
Actually, just something you actually mentioned there, Mayor Philipchuk and Bob, maybe looking for some comments on this, or just even something to look into. But with the idea of maybe encouraging people to take their own bins or their own garbage cans to the recycling area. I know I've attempted to do that from my household too a few times. I've got a couple of older, larger garbage cans that I put grass clippings in. And one of the things I find very difficult with going to the current bins that we do have is that the openings aren't necessarily big enough to lift them up and get them in there in a way that actually facilitates that in a good kind of way. Like, you actually end up spilling a lot more than you actually get in the bins. And I'm wondering if there's any options out there that might be available through Loris to either have larger openings in those bins, or even something where you've got like the tops are open and so you can just dump from the top.
I might be able to provide a little bit of information. I know that they've tried all kinds of different bins, from fully open to ones without slides, with larger openings, etc. And unfortunately, and this is very unfortunate, that they end up with couches in there, or they end up with chairs, lawn furniture. So there is a reason why the holes are just large enough for to try to push or dump something in, or push trees in, or branches, or things like that. So it's unfortunate. We'll certainly continue to look at other solutions, and of course, there's always the solution of, we do have the rollout green bins, your organic bins that you just contact the city, sign up, and there's a fee, but it maybe save you from going down or having to put things in a plastic bag and then take it there and shake it out and do those things. So we do have other initiatives and avenues in which people can get rid of their organic materials. So those are some other options, certainly, that people can take advantage of. And it's very, very convenient to have a green rollout bin, for sure. You don't have to deal with any. You just put your glass clippings or whatever in, and you're done with it. Roll it out on a specific day, and you're good. But we keep trying, I guess, to accommodate different things. But if people are going to continue to put plastic bags in it, no matter what the hole size is, like putting a plastic bag in there, or 2 or 3 or 4 that can't be pulled out, then basically that bin has to go to the landfill versus what it's supposed to be, and that's composted. So I sometimes wonder if people really understand what the impact that they're having by putting the bins, or how much extra cost it is for the taxpayers of this community, because somebody decides to put, I think there was 104 or 140 plastic bags outside of just on the weekend. So it's unacceptable, but thank you.
Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to selfishness. People that are dumping that many plastic bags in front of there, they're just selfish. They're not going to care. I think if we're going to keep this bin like in the form it is, I think it really has to come down to having having it gated off, and there has to be a plate reader for going in and a camera, on to monitor it if we're going to have it in this form. Otherwise, I think it's maybe at the point where if we're not going to do that, then we just discontinue it.
Councillor Johnson.
I know I offered my services to go and police it myself and just no plastic bags. But I think that's something that I know I can do in my post for June, but again, offer the education piece of it and let the consequences kind of be known through social media and just say, listen, when we put plastic, it defeats the purpose of. So if we can kind of, I know we've had other issues sort of going on, but I think at least try. I know we talked about that last week, and Councillor Seed had said, that it happens everywhere. And I know Saskatoon is pulling the pin on some of their recycling depots because of this. And it would be unfortunate to have to pull the pin. But again, we have to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to kind of post about the potential consequences and how it impacts.
Thank you. Councillor Ramage.
Yeah, I would agree with Bob's points, and I'm glad he brought it up. I think if our goal of a city is to increase waste diversion, I don't know that taking away the service is the right answer, but providing an alternative where those homeowners or those individuals take responsibility through their own green bin through that LORS program, I think that's an avenue that I think there's an opportunity to expand that. Anyway, we've seen really good uptake in that from what I understand. And then that might move towards less of a need for a city facility if that green bin expands and has larger pickup. So I think that's a proactive way rather than taking away threatening to take away the service, is saying that these are the alternatives that we would move towards. And I'd be interested in seeing what that might look like.
Thank you. Other comments? And I don't support taking it away because there's 2% of the people causing the problem. And I think we can do things like Councillor Peterson mentioned. Maybe it's video monitored and there's a consequence, and we use bylaw to deal with that at some, and it might just be one video from the Diamond Arena that is showing what is happening. It doesn't have to be anything too elaborate. Councillor Seed.
Just as a thought, listening to the conversation, would it be possible to find out what our bill is from LORS? In fact, when we have to dump that green bin as waste instead of as grass clippings, I think that sometimes just saying, look, it costs the city money is something that doesn't really catch people's attention. But if we were to say, look, it's costing us $200 or $500 or whatever LORS is charging the city for it, that puts some value behind it. Might actually get people's eyebrows raised, so to speak. So I would be inclined to include that in just as a general information on your release. Thank you.
And I'll try to find that out before the end of the meeting today. But again, I just don't want people to lose sight of, even though it costs us X amount of dollars, the purpose of diverting it from the landfill to, out of the landfill is the biggest purpose out of all. And, I know it does cost us money if somebody does put plastic bags in with the compost, but still all that then has to go into a landfill because it's contaminated. So that's the disappointing part. I mean, it's disappointing we have a cost, but it's also disappointing that everybody's doing their best to have a recycle program and, divert stuff out of the landfill. And then you end up just with, as his worship has mentioned, with maybe, 2% of the people ruining that for what you're trying to accomplish. Anyway, I'll try to find that information.
Councillor Ramage.
Just a quick question to follow up on something that you had brought up, Mayor Philipchuk, in terms of site monitoring. So the original Facebook post that I saw that mentioned the city was opening this up did say that the site is monitored. Is that the case?
It is monitored from time to time. We do have cameras, but we have cameras that we move all over the city for different purposes. So it may or may not be. Also, I know in the past, it's a bit more difficult. I'm probably shouldn't be discussing this here, but it's also difficult to prosecute if you don't have the exact, a really good photo or video. So that's, also a concern, and to upgrade it would be fairly costly, but we certainly can. We certainly know who the individuals are when we do catch them. I'm just, it's a bit more difficult than that, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Beck, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Like one of the questions here that I have is, certainly in terms of say like enforcement and whatnot. I'm just wondering what our bylaw enforcement fine and let's say would actually be for the infraction of let's say dumping plastic bags into the bin. But maybe with this here, once we find out the information from Bob as to what that cost is, perhaps we should let's say have it where the let's say like the fine, like if you are caught, is certainly equal to that cost of dumping that worst bin. There again, that's going to be a sizable amount, and that would be certainly just punishment for somebody, let's say, not following those rules. Because with this year, like we've certainly, had this issue for like a number of years. And I know that we moved it, to be, let's say, clean for our community and whatnot, and also to help the business owners there in the area. With this year, it's one of those services that I don't want to lose. At the same point, like it's one of those, costs that do fall on taxpayers. So we certainly have a responsibility and, fiduciary duty to certainly protect all of our residents, from those additional costs.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or comments for City Manager Smith? Okay, thank you. We'll move down to our Finance Manager, Manager Rosenthal-Hebert.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The first item I have for your consideration this afternoon is the quarterly financial update. Highlights to the financial results include revenues recognized to date at 107% of budget. This includes general revenue at 102%, grant revenue at 123% of budget. We received some unexpected COVID restart revenue, about $657,000, and also received a capital donation from Avitex, which is included in this amount as well, of almost $100,000. And that was for half the cost of the traffic signals. Our interest revenue is also higher than anticipated due to a slow start on the capital projects. Economic development recognized 0% of revenue due to the majority, it's actually all of the revenue in relation to economic development relates to WOBE, which was canceled for 2020. Fire revenue is recognized significantly higher than expected at 297%, and this is included within the protective services revenue. And that was because there were significant billings in the fall, including about $75,000 to the RM of Perman Park. Recreation revenue is recognized at 69% of budget, and this is because recreation was affected most harshly by the COVID-19 pandemic. Expenses recognized to date are at 91% of budget. As a summary, that includes protective services below budget at 92%, and this is largely due to the RCMP not being at full force, so we saw lower than budgeted billings. Planning and development at 74%. Regional planning came in under budget by $70,000. Planning, zoning, and consulting only used 11% of an $80K budget. Economic development was at 64% of budget, and recreation utilized 78% of budget. It's important to remember that final adjustments, allocations, and accruals are ongoing with the formal drafting of our 2020 financial statements. You'll see an overall expense savings of just over $1.8 million. Wages, because of temporary layoffs of 26 employees, as well as a freeze on hiring summer students, resignations, and holds on hiring budgeted positions, resulted in overall savings of just over $826,000. Within materials and supplies is an unbudgeted increase of $28,000 to support COVID supplies. However, this was offset elsewhere in savings elsewhere, including $11K in trade show expenses and just over $60K in recreation and culture, for a resulting combined materials and supplies underage of just over $22,000. Savings of almost $58,000 in travel and training is across all departments, including council, due to cancellations of conferences and limited travel. Utilities is directly related to the shutdown of recreation facilities. However, we did see power expenses come in over budget due to the cost of additional street and traffic lights in the city. Overall, contracted services came in $700,000 under budget. Overall, after accounting for lost revenue and considering savings to expenses, administration is expecting to see an operating surplus of $3.2 million higher than originally budgeted for. Again, over $800,000 of this was in saved wages, and a large portion contributed to expenses across all departments that were not realized due to COVID restrictions. However, administration would recommend that with the closing of the 2020 year end and posting of final journal entries, council approve a reserve transfer that takes into consideration future losses to grant revenue, such as provincial revenue sharing. The recommendation I have is that administration recommends that the December 30th, 2020 quarterly financial report be taken to the next city council meeting for approval.
Okay, any questions or comments? Councillor Ramage.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. Just a question about the reserve transfers. I imagine council would receive a recommendation coming from administration in terms of what those reserve transfers and to which funds they would be in the future.
Yes, you bet. That'll come within probably at the next committee meeting.
Okay,
if
wonderful.
Not straight to a council meeting. Yes. So it's an entry that does need to happen with the closing of the financial statement. So very quickly.
Wonderful, thank you. I think my preference, if it's possible, is that would be brought to a committee of the whole meeting, just so we could have that opportunity to have more discussion on that.
Sure.
Councillor C.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. My question also relates somewhat to what Councillor Ramage had just mentioned. My question is, with the $3.2 million surplus and the recommendation to be allocated into reserves, what is the forecasted shortfall of the grant revenues that were originally budgeted for? Do we have again, I don't expect it to the cent kind of thing, but we have a general idea of how much we had tentatively planned on receiving that in fact we haven't to this point or don't anticipate?
We'll expect to receive what we budgeted this year. However, we are expecting to see that decrease in the coming years.
Do we have a concept of how much that will be over the next couple of years, or just as a general idea?
I don't know. It's dependent upon the spending, the overall spending in Saskatchewan. Bob, do you have an idea of what that might be? Is there any sort of predictions?
There's all kinds of predictions. We're probably looking at about $200,000 in the future here within the next couple of years. Again, we're always 2 years behind on the percentage of PST that's contributed to the municipalities through the revenue sharing funding. And that will be our biggest loss that we'll see with the reduction in PST. So we'll probably have those figures closer to the end of the, could be any time now because the year ends March 31st for the provincial government. So their new numbers will be out and we'll have a pretty good idea of what next year will hold and then the year after. But the anticipation is that it'd be about a loss of about $200,000 to Warman.
Thank you. Yeah, my reason is just that I want to make sure that we're obviously allocating the differences there to ensure that we have it for going forward for some of those capital projects, but at the same time, not putting too much money into reserve that can be used in other avenues. So thank you for that.
Other questions or comments? I just want to say thank you for all the notes and the clarity of your information. It makes it pretty easy to follow and see all of that come together. And it's nice. We have the provincial budget and then we have a federal budget coming today, and hopefully there's something there that really is a stimulant that helps with some of our projects too. So thank you. We will move on then to Public Works. Jason, Manager Weed.
Good afternoon. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. So in my report, essentially it's information to update Mayor and Council as to where we are currently at. Yes, it is deploying the green bins, listening along to what Manager Bob Smith said there, and that's absolutely right. We tried multiple things such as opening the back door and allowing people to put the bigger items in, but it resulted in a lot of debris that was not recyclable or not garden waste in there. So we have definitely tried a lot of different avenues, and we'll see where the next step goes. And I guess the two just the appendixes I had on the report as well, just the update on our permit to operate a waterworks, and that was accepted here this year. And as well, we had to renew the official copy of our permit to operate a waterworks April 14th. That was renewed as well. And that it goes, I think it was 4 or 5 years before we have to renew that again. I'll open it up to any questions if there are.
Any questions? Councillor Johnson.
I was just wondering, there was mention with the renewal of the waterworks, there was amendments to the, I don't know these words, trihalomethane and the haloacetic acid monitoring. What were the changes? Do you know?
Yeah, well, first of all, good job. You did pronounce them exactly right. They are trihalomethanes and haloacetic. We will no longer have to test for them every year quarterly, because we've been passing those tests. So the next time, I think it's 2024, we'll need to take 4 samples again during that year. That was the amendment that was changed on that one. Had we been over that limit on any of those samples, we would then have to do it annually, continue doing it annually.
Councillor Seed.
Again, not a question, but rather just a comment. I just wanted to pass on. I had several neighbors stop me over the weekend while we were out enjoying the Saturday weather. And Jason, again, I just wanted to pass on the positive comments about how quick the parks were cleaned up, how quick even the streets have been swept. Residents are very, very happy, at least in my neighborhood, as to the job that you and your crew are doing. And I think it's something that not that we need to remind you every week when we meet and discuss it, but it is appreciated from the residents, and I think it's well deserved. So thank you to you and your team.
Thank you. And I did receive.
I will.
Go ahead.
I will make sure to pass that on to the crew. We definitely got out sooner this year on all the street sweeping and stuff. The weather was better, but I will definitely pass it on.
And my quick comment was going to be that I've received a few letters and forwarded them to Jason to pass on to his team with very positive comments that way. It was amazing them cleaning that on Centennial, that north-south sidewalk. It's great for people that want to bike up to the north side that way. So excellent. It was great to see. Any other questions or comments? The one I want to mention that people have asked about, and just your comment with the water valves coming up, just anything they can do about that, citizens can do about that, or is it something that it can be rectified after, or what happens now?
Better that they just call City Hall and make a work order and we take care of it, because those valves will only, once the frost lets go, that's when you can knock them back down. If you try and do it too soon, you could cause damage. We need to pop off that top curve valve, that cap, and just ensure that the piece is sliding over the stem, or else we could cause damage further down below. So just call City Hall, get a work order made up. If it's too high and we can't knock it down yet, we'll put up a barricade or a pylon. Other than that, we will take care of it.
Thank you. And that's good for the public to know. Appreciate that. Any other questions? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the street sweeping. We've been doing a lot on Clubhouse Boulevard. Has there been an increase to the budget? Will there be an impact to your budget for the, I guess, extra street cleaning? No,
we street clean. the city of Warman's always street clean throughout the year. So we bring those street sweepers out quite frequently. We probably put more hours on our street sweepers just that we try and keep our city clean. There would not be a noticeable effect because we try and tie it in with other sweeping we want to do anyway. Let's say we're going south or north down Centennial, then we'll make a pass down Clubhouse right away and pick up those dirt piles that have been pushed out. So no, you shouldn't see an effect on the budget for that.
Awesome. Thanks for accommodating, FYI.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Manager Weed. Have a great day. We will move down to planning.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk, members of council. A few items for discussion today. The first part of my report is mainly updates, just my regular updates that I provide on a monthly basis. I've also provided some up-to-date permit information. As has kind of been the trend so far this year, permits are doing very well. We're up almost double over last year in terms of number and more than triple, I guess, in terms of value. There's still a number of kind of permits to be calculated within that value of construction as well. And we're getting more permits in kind of on a daily basis. Just to reflect kind of the real estate or the current real estate market out there and how busy it really is. PIDs are something we provide to real estate agents when someone's purchasing a house. It ensures or it gives them confidence that all of the permits taken out on the house have been closed and that there's no outstanding issues to deal with. We did 35 to date in 2020, and to date in 2021, we've done up to 90. And that was as of last week. Real estate numbers, just because of where I get the data from, I'll be providing those kind of on a semi-annual month. So I'll provide up-to-date numbers again in May. Further to the last meeting, we have went back to the owner developer of Lowen Court. We wanted to obviously provide more information to council. We didn't have a lot to go off at the last meeting. It was more of a kind of high-level overview of what they were potentially looking at. So basically what we've gotten back is a lot more detail just in terms of what some of those zoning bylaw regulations and architectural controls would look like. There's been some more information provided just in terms of fencing and landscaping requirements that would be the owner's responsibility, as well as some of the zoning information. Then there's just been some kind of higher level information provided in terms of the type of market or client that they would potentially be aiming these types of developments after. And then finally, a subdivision or a formal subdivision plan was created from web surveys just to give council a better idea in terms of what the kind of overall property layout would look like, the number of lots and size. I think when we presented it at the last committee of the whole, because of kind of the lack of information at that point, probably gave council the feeling that it was going to be a little more industrial than I think the intent behind it is after getting further information and having subsequent conversations with the developer. The intent here is more to provide the larger single family lots with the larger garage for potential for more of that hobby / storage of, recreational equipment and that type of thing, rather than, necessarily running industrial type businesses off of these sites. Just because it was a public meeting and the information obviously went public, there was some of the adjacent property owners who took it amongst themselves to contact the city and or provide us with some writings with just their initial feelings. I've attached both the positive and kind of negative concerns that the city received. There's been a bit of a discrepancy, I guess, just in terms of who was contacted during some of that public engagement and exactly what they knew when kind of the comments came out. We've also provided just a plan of what the previous development or what was or what is currently approved on site. That's with the 6 apartment buildings and all of the subsequent kind of parking that goes along with that. There's some examples of the houses on the properties or some different options for what potential housing could look like. And further to that, I do have actually the developer as part of the meeting right now, just in case there are any additional questions that council has. But from administration's perspective, and just because of some of the confusion around the public engagement, our thought process is that maybe a good recommendation would be to begin the rezoning process to R2. And now the only reason I'm saying beginning the rezoning process is because that process involves public engagement. But my recommendation would be that we expand that public engagement to actually do targeted mailouts to all of the surrounding sites, as in addition to the already advertising that we do with that. And obviously all of that information would come back to council before, we get to second and third reading of that bylaw. The reason I guess I'm suggesting the rezoning is because it does include a public engagement component. So I would just hate to go out to the public, kind of wait another month and then kind of come back and make the decision to either move forward with the bylaw readings and then have to do public engagement again, or kind of have a lot of that information already ready available for council to take a look at. So I've got the recommendation there before council today. I guess I'm just looking for a little direction. And as mentioned, via myself or the owner developer, we can answer any additional questions that council may have.
Okay, so questions, Councillor C.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. This is something that I am a fan of what Brad is saying here, is to get this pushed forward. I've had several conversations just through a mutual connection with Mr. Lowen regarding some of the developments and some of the questions that he's brought forth. And one of the concerns that I have here is that I don't want it to get caught up in red tape, so to speak, that we're, constantly committee of the whole, looking for more and more information. I think that sending out a more accurate reflection of what the intended use of the property, such as what we've received here, I think can alleviate a lot of the concerns that residents around the area have. Looking at these pictures and specifically driving by the residence that Mr. Lowen had lived in before, these are not going to be a industrial eyesore. These are beautiful homes. I mean, they've got a really nice attachment to them. And I do believe that there's some good intention there for these to be quite honestly, premium properties, not something that's going to be a guy welding out in the grass and grinding and making a whole bunch of noise. So I really like what I see. The only concern that I see with the proposal that was put forward, and specifically answering one of the questions, was the ability of having a seed container, even though it is going to be painted white. My concern is that over time it become rusty and a bit of an eyesore to both the properties and residents around it. But overall, I am a big fan of this, and I look forward to hopefully seeing what the rest of council feels and getting some community support behind it sooner than later. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, and sorry, Mayor Philipchuk, if I could just jump in there for 1 sec. Just in regard to the CCAN container and all of the regulations, this was the developer owner's kind of proposal. The CCAN container is probably the one in there that would need a change in the bylaw just from the existing kind of zoning. So I guess my point was saying that, and maybe James would want to add to this, but I think there's some flexibility there too, especially if when we go out to public consultation, something specific like the CCAN containers are raised. I don't think that's necessarily a hill that the owner developer is kind of willing to die on, so to speak, and would be open to some suggestive changes in regards if there are major concerns with one or two or more of those regulations in there.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, so this is definitely not my area of expertise, but I'm just looking, they are beautiful homes, don't get me wrong, and I'm glad that we had the visual, but I'm looking at the size of the garages. Now, is that every single garage that's going to have that height and the length, like that 1,400 square feet? My concern would be the tinkering, the hobbyists, the revving of the recreational equipment and that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, having an extra container on the storage. So what kind of, I guess maybe I want more clarification at what you mean with the live and work structures. Is that, are their businesses going to be running small businesses out of the shop, like a overhead hoist, and he runs a small, they run a small mechanic business? What about business licenses ahead, or do we get an idea of who's going to be able to access those?
So the intent, I guess, behind the larger garages is that that would be the space for the hobby or home occupation. He's not proposing anything necessarily outside of what we would propose for a home occupation on any other R2 site within Warman. I guess the intent behind the larger garage is more for that hobby and storage of kind of the recreational equipment, whether it be a motorhome, fifth wheel, snowmobiles, quads, those kinds of things. And I think, with or without the garage, we see a lot of homes around the community with those kinds of materials already stored, whether it's across the driveway, some in the front yard, which we had to deal with. And I think the intent behind these or this type of development is that you're offering that kind of enclosed space for people to store that, rather than it kind of having to be across the driveway or pay for storage at an auxiliary site. But James might have something to add to that as well.
Yeah, for the use of the building and the reason for having all the buildings kind of have the same with that minimum garage size and the tall overhead door. Reason for that is to have a community versus a single residence applying for the project. Because if you have one big building and 9 small buildings, that defeats the whole purpose. Then I would not proceed with the subdivision at all. It's to keep everything looking and feeling the same for the buyers and the community, and that I think that would really enhance the look for Lowen Court for anyone coming through town.
Other questions? I guess I'll just a couple comments too. Is that first of all, 609 Murray is a masterpiece. Like it's a premier property in our community, and this is a lot different presentation than I was really given a month ago from that vantage point of what this could look like. Because my fear was that when I first heard it, what could it turn into? Could it turn into Hamilton, where it is industrial and become storage and become a lot of things? And so I'm seeing a lot more things that become, these are premier homes where there's opportunities to do business. So that will be great. And I definitely support the recommendation from Manager Toth about we need to get public consultation going, because I think that will give individuals and everyone a chance for their voice, because we have surface level comments right now without any details of what was actually going there. And so I think it was more on first instinct more than really by having information. So I do support. Other questions or comments? Councillor Beck.
Thank you. Certainly this year, thanks very much for the information coming forward. Certainly nice to see, let's say, the photos and certainly have like a appropriate vision as to what, let's say what's being sought here. So thank you very much for all of that. I do have some specific questions though, regarding, let's say, like the letters of concern. So from the letter of concern, there's 2 things that really kind of stand out for me. First one being point number 2. And there again, like it's kind of setting, let's say, like the dust, noise, pollution, and and that kind of thing and whatnot. So I guess I'm wondering, Brad, can we pass a special bylaw for let's say all of those concerns that would be specific to this particular development, where that might be different from the other parts of the city?
So I guess my suggestion would be, and I definitely something we could look into, but my thought is that with some of the concerns that were raised after the last meeting, and I think they were relevant concerns based on kind of what the presentation was, as opposed to kind of what's being presented now in an R2 zone, with no kind of flex or changes from what normally would be approved in terms of home occupation for an R2 site. I would suggest, I guess, that any of our existing bylaws or policies, just like we would deal with any of those similar issues in an R2 area, a typical R2 area, would kind of work to deal with a lot of those concerns here. The other, I guess, just quick comment that I would make about the letters of concern that were submitted, again, I think very relevant to maybe some of the presentation that came from the last meeting, but I'm wondering if with kind of this newer information and some more of kind of the visuals to give people an idea of exactly what's being proposed, if those similar concerns would still be, I guess present, or they would still have those similar concerns. But yeah, I guess I would suggest that with the R2 zoning and things kind of staying, similar to a typical area in Warman, with the exception that the lots are substantially bigger and we're allowing for a larger attached garage. Really, if you've got a noise or dust or pollution coming from an R2 house on Clubhouse or Centennial Boulevard, that it would be no difference in terms of the enforcement that we would do on that base, as opposed to this on Long Court.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. So certainly with this year, that provides me a lot of clarity on that particular question. I guess the one that really kind of stood out for me was actually point number 6. And there again, I don't know if this is true or whatnot. And I guess this is where I'd like to have a little bit of information back from you. But what the concern there is that the storm sewer lines from the proposed development are tied to the lines of Diamond Plate. So with this year, I don't know, is that true? What kind of limitations might we have on the infrastructure that's there? Because there again, certainly with maybe, let's say larger demands on maybe water usage or things like that for whatever might actually go in there. Just to know that we're not going to create floodings or problems if it is actually tied into Diamond Place, because that would certainly be a concern for me, right? And I guess secondary question to that, if it is tied into Diamond Place, or let's say if it would be, could that actually be let's say diverted that kind of thing to our city infrastructure, where it wouldn't, would there be some solution there where it wouldn't impact Diamond Place?
Yeah, great question. So I guess my comments back would be that all of the engineering that's been done on site and the installation of any of the underground infrastructure was sized appropriately at the time so that we could actually move forward with the 6 apartment condo developments and all of the auxiliary parking and everything that was required, which was considerably more hard surface, non-permeable surface than what's being presented here. So in terms of the amount of runoff that would be generated, the number of toilets that you're going to have flushing, I think your overall water consumption is going to be significantly lower than what was proposed and that the site has been designed for. But that being said, is we would, once this kind of moves to further steps, definitely have our engineer do another quick auxiliary review just to make sure that, there's not going to be any issues downstream or anything as a result of this development. But just in terms of the way it was designed to what's being proposed now, significantly less in terms of capacity requirements.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thanks.
Okay. We have Councillor Seed, then Peterson, and then Johnson. Okay, Councillor
Just
Seed.
a couple of, thank you, Mr. Gary. A couple of quick comments that I had forgotten to bring up before. I think it's important to understand, when I was looking as well at the zoning and requesting this to be an R2, my property has a detached shop on it as well. I mean, it's certainly not as big as these, but even by a 26 by 24, there's no special request that's being made here really for the R2. It's similar to many houses in Warman, just on a larger scale, if you will. I don't see that as somebody that's in my shop all the time doing all kinds of things, I don't get complaints from neighbors. I don't think these are going to be places where, again, people are setting up fabrication shops and being grinding all through the night and working 3 shifts or anything like that. And I think that that's part of the community concern. The only other concern that I have is specifically related to some of the letters, both for and against, that were submitted, is that I would urge us as a council and administration as well, that if we do get letters of intent that say that they are not in favor of this, I would want to make sure that they're accurately representing the groups that they say that they are representing, because there is definitely some contradictory letters indicating, you know, I'm speaking for everybody on behalf of this group, and yet other letters saying, no, listen, I live in this group, I'm in favor of this. So I just want to make sure that as we move forward with the consultations, that we don't just take one person's letter as the gospel, so to speak, say that they speak for the other, 30 or 50 people that are part of that community. I would want to make sure, even if it involves going door to door, dropping off letters, I would want to ensure that we're doing our due diligence on that. Thank you.
Yeah, and my recommendation would be for any further engagement that we'll actually do, just to your point, an addressed door-to-door mail out. We'll also obviously mail out to the condo boards, and the condo boards are more than welcome to comment on the development. But we would also give the opportunity to each individual door, if they wish to submit comments on their own, that they could do that.
Okay, Councillor Peterson.
Brad, one question I have is, in the last, I don't know, let's say 10 years, have there been any complaints around Warman about people with large garages, about noise, about them fixing their semis in these garages and that? Because I know of a few, I know of at least two where the garages are large enough and they have literally had their semis in these garages, working on them, running in them, in that. And I'm just wondering if this has ever been a problem anywhere else.
We have had a few concerns regarding semis specifically. I think the two that come to mind for me have come to council. One wasn't inside a shop. It was just parked in the rear yard next to someone. And the other example was in a shop, would kind of run it early in the morning, and the adjacent property owner had some concerns with the noise that was created by that. Both situations we dealt with. This, I would suggest, again, due to kind of the property sizes and, the new construction methods, insulation, that kind of thing, you may not end up with those similar concerns to semis. But I can never say never. And I don't think the intent is that these would just be used for semis, maybe used for motorhome, fifth wheel, or just, someone who collects cars or wants to do work on cars, those types of things. So generally speaking, I'd say no, we don't get a lot of complaints, whether it's just, Joe hobbyist working in his garage, or even some of the home occupations that we have with different things outside of the garage, retail where they do storage and those kinds of things in their garages, or we do have some mechanical too. We never hear about those, but those two semi ones do come to mind.
Okay, and I guess I wasn't necessarily wanting to speak specifically to semis. I was using it as an example because those size of garages seem similar to what these size of garages are, and would allow for, right?
We've definitely heard, both sides too with the semis, and probably in some ways more from the people who own the semis that, it's tough for them to find spots to park. Obviously there is sometimes those issues, I guess, between neighbors. And I think, the good thing about a development like this is if it does move forward is, everybody's under the same kind of arrangement when they go in there. So, you're not dealing with competing land uses where, one person may have a semi and the next door, wouldn't even ever think of that being next to them kind of thing. At least with something like this, there's a little more continuity to the type of demographic that's using it and what they're purchasing it for, I guess.
Okay, and I guess my other comment would be that, like Councillor Ceda said, I'm note a little concern that there's some seems to be some conflict between the letters of support and concern from the same place, and I don't think it is incumbent upon the city, other than to meet our statutory requirements for notice, to go out and sell this concept. I think that's that's entirely upon the developer to do. If he wants to have this passed and there's enough concern out there against it, I think it's incumbent on the developer to sell his concept, not the city.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a fair comment. And I know he has already approached a number, especially of the units directly backing this. Our statutory requirements for rezoning just require a 2-week advertising period. So that would not include any specific mail out. It's not a discretionary use, it's a rezoning. So all we're required to do under legislation is a 2-week advertising in the local paper. Just because this is a bigger type development and some changes to kind of what's existing, even though, you could argue definitely a less intense use than what's approved there already. Probably the recommendation, and especially because we've already received some letters about it, would be to include the mail out as well. But I agree that anything kind of beyond that, or trying to sell the development to residents, is beyond what our scope is within the project.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson was next, and then Councillor Ramage.
I'm actually good. Manager Toth answered all the questions.
Thank you. Councillor Ramage.
Thanks, Mayor Philipchuk. So Manager Toth, I agree with your recommendation in terms of moving this forward in the rezoning process. Just a couple questions about the R2 zoning. Looking at it right now, there's permitted uses and discretionary uses. And so anything under a traditional home occupation subject to requirements of section 5.3 would be a permitted use and would not come to council. If I understand all of this correctly, under the discretionary use is the non-traditional home occupation subject to requirements of section 5.3. So if we're looking at non-traditional home occupations, would we be looking at having 10 different applications coming to council for approval, or would we be looking at taking care of that in the overall zoning process for this area?
Because I don't think you're going to see all 10 properties have or purchase it for the exact same reasons. You may have the one who wants to store the semi in the larger garage, or the retired couple who stores their motorhome in there and takes it down south in the winter. I think probably the intent would be that we would bring each individual non-traditional back to council, just because I don't think it's going to be a one side or one shoe fits all kind of situation with all 10 properties in terms of what they'll be using the property for, either traditional versus non-traditional.
Okay,
you may not even
that's
have
exactly
you may
what I
not
thought,
even
and I think that's an important.
Sorry,
Councillor Ramage.
I was going to say perfect, and that's similar to the answer that I was looking for here. So I think that's an important piece here, is that while we're discussing a variety of different uses that these properties may be used for, they will come to council. They will under a discretionary use application. So at that time, then we can have more information, more questions in terms of how that fits into this overall project. Is that correct?
that's correct. Now, keep in mind that's just for home occupations. So whether you're, running a business kind of out of the home, if you're just storing, your fifth wheel or motorhome in there, that wouldn't be considered an occupation and have to come to council.
That's right, because that would fall under the permitted use and there would be nothing discretionary about that.
Correct.
Okay, now under section 5.3, under home occupations, recognizing some more of the hobby type work or what's been described, would there be any changes required to that section to support this?
Right at the offset right now, it's hard to say. You may with a development like this have someone come in who's interested in purchasing a property and maybe has an idea to use it differently than what we thought, outside of the existing list. I don't mean something, completely off the board type situation, but in that situation, we would, at the time bring back a land use amendment, potentially, or sorry, a zoning bylaw amendment potentially, with the recommendation and some information. But I don't foresee that being a big issue. It's just be for maybe one of those one-offs that come in that maybe we didn't think about prior to and isn't in the list right now. But there would be, again, that potential for not only council to comment on it, but the residents to comment on it again, just because it would require that land use bylaw amendment. So, or sorry, zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay, perfect. So I think with my reading of the R2 residential district and the section 5.3, along with the information that's been provided in this package, I absolutely agree that I think we're in a position that we can move this forward in terms of that process and see what that process brings in terms of requiring more information at this time. While I do agree that it's not council or administration's position to sell this to the surrounding residents, I do think consistent information is really important. And I think that will impact the overall quality of that engagement that we're required for. So I would support information being provided in the mail out as a very neutral position in terms of making sure that there's consistent information.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be providing similar to what the committee of the whole report is, obviously without a recommendation, but a lot of the information that's kind of contained within the committee of the whole report would go out with the letter requesting comment, I guess.
Okay.
And it'll be the same. It'll be the exact same that's sent to all doors. Nothing will be changed from one development to another or anything like that.
Certainly, and I think my last final comment on this would be really encouraged by the information that's been provided. I don't like the idea of having CCAMs on the property for a lot of the reasons that Councillor Seed has mentioned, but overall very encouraging and looking forward to seeing this move forward.
Okay, other questions or comments? Great. You can continue on, Manager Doe.
Thank you. The next item is from Canada Post, and I guess is a little more for information from council at this point. We've been contacted by Canada Post, who, because of the pandemic, is looking at a shortage of ability to address different or newer places within Warman. They're wanting to move us to what they call an urbanized model for postal codes. As kind of outlined in the letter, this does involve changing a number of addresses. Canada Post is required or will be the ones to provide the year forwarding mail. So any mail sent to your old address will forward to your new mailing address. But there would be some requirements on the property owner's responsibility to contact their utility companies, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, it's not ideal situation. It does create some inconvenience for our residents and for the city in terms of updating our systems. We've contacted Canada Post just to get some further information in terms of what compensation not only they'll provide to the residents for this, but also if there's any ability for compensation to the city just in terms of the work that we'll have to do to update our internal systems, addressing all of that. I've attached the letter from Canada Post, or sorry, it was an email from Canada Post. As mentioned, this is just kind of the outset. They're just kind of contacting the city, wanting to get a feel from council if there's any other major issues besides what administration has already talked to them about, or mega concerns before they kind of start the process. And I think they're looking at probably later summer, where they would start actually contacting the public and getting kind of the wheels moving in regard to this. So more of an information item, but definitely if there's any questions that I can't answer, I can go back to Canada Post and then get those answers for council.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Seed.
Just one quick question, Manager Totham, and it's something I don't expect you to have the answer for right now. I understand that you addressed the question is, would there be any compensation to the city? And clearly in the email from Canada Post, it indicates that there would be none with regards to that. My question would be to see an estimated, and I understand it wouldn't be exact, but cost to the city to in fact change this over in our systems in regards of either man hours or physical cost of doing so. Because I think this is something that is being done by Canada Post to optimize their service. And certainly, you know, if it's a couple $1,000s, I don't think that it's a negative thing for our community. But if it ends up being into the tens of thousands of dollars worth of time or energy spent for us to acclimate to their new system, I think it's something that we definitely need to address with them. So I'd be looking for some more information on that specifically in the coming meetings. Thank you.
My only comment would be that the biggest issue is going to be for the public dealing with the national level stuff. And it is with income tax and everything else. And you start changing, it's just like everything gets locked out. And so I wish they have I hope they have a plan dealing with that, because as things are becoming so automated now, I hope they deal with their own national level systems, because that will, and we're seeing that more and more with so many people working from home. So that's my only comment to them. Anything else? Okay, I'll let you move on.
Yeah, thanks for that information. I will definitely we'll work internally to see about that cost estimate, and I'll pose some of these questions to Jeff Burke with Canada Post too, just moving forward in terms of their thoughts on that. So thank you for the comments. The remainder of my report is just related to bylaw enforcement. We've provided the typical parking spreadsheet for council's kind of review, and then just the bylaw stats for the month of March.
Okay, any comments about bylaw? I just want to thank Wade and Grayson for that newscast and all the promotion that went with that. Our young man picking up the garbage at the skateboard park, and just a great news story. But that young man is a superstar. Like he was there and he was just running around picking up garbage. He's a machine. So, but it's good that Wade organized some organizing of that and got it at all levels. So those are good news stories that definitely appreciate, and some of the other ones finding them clean up. Those are always positive. People like seeing those types of things. So appreciate that effort.
Yeah, I think the program's actually been, successful in terms of some of the optics around it and getting the word out there that, there are people in the city that are doing their part to keep it clean.
Okay, thank you, Manager Toth.
Thank you.
Move on. Now to Manager McGonigal with Recreation.
Good afternoon, Mayor Philipchuk, members of council. You have my report in front of you. A lot of the information in the report is our transition from winter to spring or summer activities. A lot of it is touching base on a lot of capital or major projects that we're doing. So there's lots of information in there. An additional piece of information that just came to our door on Friday was that the libraries would be in Wheatland are reverting back to curbside pickup instead of being in person. So that is taking place today and will be probably for the next 2-3 weeks. So we'll keep you posted as things progress in that field. I do bring 2 items for your attention today. The first is the leasable space in our facilities. Things just haven't been picking up, and we would like to extend that rent relief out to those lessees in both our facilities, the Diamond Arena and in the Legend Center. So I've made a recommendation onto that.
Any comments about that? Councillor Johnson.
I was just wondering if they're doing anything as far as online sales and online marketing to kind of just at least generate some income, because there is a reduction in foot traffic. Is there any way that they're doing curbside with some of those sports stores that are in there?
Not so much with the sports stores. The one sports store has yet to open because of the situation. Subway does do a curbside pickup program, but business right now is not very good for Subway right now. So she is actually still closed from the Easter break. Booster Juice has really cut back on their hours. They're just open in the evenings now. So they are trying to get the word out there. It's not like it's a storefront. Here you have to park and come in, but they have tried some different stuff, and it's just, there's just such little activity happening in the evenings here with the small groups and numbers that the foot traffic is really down.
Any other questions? Comments? Councillor Seed.
I just wanted to confirm, and I suspect that this is the case, but Manager McGonigal, we don't have any other parties that are expressing interest in occupying those spaces at the current time, do we?
No, we do not.
Yeah, I didn't think we would, but I thought it was, I didn't want to be saying, yes, we can reduce rent and you don't have to be open if we have somebody else that was waiting in the wings to pay full rent, so to speak. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Other questions or comments? Anything else, Paul?
The last one I have is Crystal Spring Park, Crystal Springs Lake Park. The walking path on the north end of the walking path system there, up against the retaining wall. We have issues with it. We've had issues with it for a number of years. We've done some real quick fixes to get through years, and it really took a big dip this year. I think we dropped about 6 inches in total. The pathway has dropped. So if you look at the pictures there's Calvin measuring it. We're about 8 inches below half of the pathway. It's basically split right down the middle, and the south half of the pathway is sinking with the retention wall. So right now we have repairs to come forth in 2024, and the way we're moving, I think we can make that. The problem is keeping it open and keeping it safe for our residents. And so I put in there a recommendation that we take out the current asphalt and we replace it with crusher dust, which is a product which packs really, really hard. You'll still be able to ride your bikes through it. You'll still be able to push a carriage through it. You'll still be able to rollerblade through it. It's just easier for us, instead of doing another layer of pavement over top, which last time we did that, I think it ran us around $17,000 to do that little stretch. So if we ripped it out, prepped it all, put crusher dust back in, we're looking at about $1,500 to $2,000 tops to do that project. And then it's just easier for us over the next 2 years to add crusher dust to it to ensure that it stays safe all the time. And we can do the little bit of maintenance to make sure that it is safe. Instead of being where we're at now, where conditions have to be right to fix it, we have to call a professional company in to come in and patch it. So that would be my recommendation going forward. It gets us through to that 2024 stage when we can actually repair it properly.
Any questions or comments? Councilor Ramage.
Thanks, Mayor Philipchuk. In terms of the Crystal Spring path, what would end up having to happen for this to be brought back to council to advance this sooner than 2024? Is there something that we're monitoring, or what would trigger a request for this to be advanced sooner?
I would say something drastic has to happen where the pathway really separates and drops by a foot or so. Dropping a couple inches or 2-3 inches a year is something that we can deal with until we get to that 2024 date. If we wish to do it sooner, we can bring that to council, and council can make that recommendation to move it up within the budget. We'd have to make sure that everything works with the finance manager and that she has the funds in there to cover that project and shuffle that project around.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's more just having an understanding of what would trigger administration coming back to council to do that, rather than looking to advance it right now. But I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Yeah, the movement on the pathway doesn't usually happen in later spring or summer or fall. It has to go through that winter season where the groundwater underneath it is freezing and pushing that pathway further and further out. So, yeah, it'd be nice to come back with a couple different recommendations other than what I have had. for the fix. We'll still throw that out there and see if there's any creative ideas coming back. Putting in large rocks, maybe holding the retention wall in place where it is right now, or ripping it apart and putting in a dead man in there.
Councillor Seat?
I just wanted to express my opinion on this as somebody that, well, I'd like to say I walk that path every day, but my dog would tell you different. Walk it quite frequently, and I've had some conversations with Paul regarding this fix, so to speak, or temporary fix. And I'm confident that with this low cost solution to get us to the 2024 timeframe, that this is reasonable. And I think that even discussions that I've had with a couple of people just literally walking down that path at that time and kind of explaining what the process is and what is being looked at before even seeing this as a I'll call it a temporary solution, but I think it's a viable one. I think it's sound in the decision, and I would definitely support it going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Anything else, Paul?
That is everything.
Okay, I just have one with, you mentioned tennis courts, and now are they tennis courts or pickleball courts, and do you know what the utilization is? Like, you have, are they being used a lot, or is that something that because at one point they were almost becoming ball hockey, and so I'm just curious if we know anything about that.
Right now we've got both lines on it.
Yeah.
So we've got pickleball and tennis on it. It has really moved away since the outdoor rink has come involved in Prairie Oasis Park, where ball hockey and lacrosse and some of those outdoor stuff is happening there. Pickleball hasn't taken on outside yet because they still like being inside. But the tennis has picked up. We don't have, somebody sitting there marking how many people are in a daytime. But it is, you go out, you drive around, there are 3-4 people at the tennis courts on an evening. So the activities out there have been increasing. They're being utilized a lot more than what they have in the past.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've gone by there a few times, just wondering how that's being used. So it's a great place. Councillor Beck.
Paul, let's say from the reports that that are provided this year, I do have just 2 topics to to raise with you. First one there being with the library. So under this, it's certainly outlined that there's some internet issues, there at the library. I was wondering, has that been sourced? Do we know what those problems are? And let's say where that might be. And then I have another question.
Okay. The internet issue is a school issue right now. So they've been working with the school. It's almost like a scheduling issue because of the openness of the Wi-Fi and not letting it expand out into the hallways. They do a controlled Wi-Fi at the school. And so they've been having trouble containing that and keeping that where it needs to be and being open and not secured inside the library. So they've been working with the technical people at Prairie Spirit School Division to make sure that that is correct. And it's right now it's still spotty. So.
Okay. The other thing that I noted is, certainly with the meeting minutes and whatnot, it did say the attached financials, and I didn't see any financials there. So with this year, just with this year, if we could just make sure that that those do continue to come forward. I'd like to shift topics to the Legend Center, and in your report, you highlight the fact that Greenwave is basically looking to install their hardware at the Legend Center to kind of monitor, let's say, the activities there. I'm wondering, with the slowdown that we have with COVID, does that affect the monitoring that they're going to have for us, and how long are they going to monitor for? Like, is this going to be just 7 months, or is this going to be a full 12?
This is longer than full 12. This is a system that we're going to install permanently at the Legend Center. So we'll be able to get feedback off of that monitoring system 24/7. This system is supposed to identify a lot of operation leakages, is what we want to say. It'll identify well, this pump came on at 3 o'clock in the morning, and why did it come on? So it's not just a 6-month thing or a 12-month thing. It's a permanent install.
Yeah, and certainly this year, that is definitely excellent to hear. Like I know when I had first heard about the program, with this year they basically described coming down, monitoring a facility for a particular amount of time, and then after that, kind of let's say providing recommendations. Knowing that that's going to be fully installed in there with everything that goes on, that's certainly fantastic to hear. So thank you very much for that update.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Manager McGonigal. We are at break, and I think we'll take one since we're well into over an hour. Let's be back here in 10 minutes. So that will be 2:34 on your phones. Thank you. 1 minute warning.
Did you get an EDO?
Isn't that always the case, eh?
I was thinking of you when I was going for my workout. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. So as I'm right when I'm leaving is when we had that stars landing on Clubhouse and that whole incident, and then house fire that night, and then we would have had another late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Would have had another really big house fire, except person tossing butts in a plastic planter started lighting on fire. And if it wasn't for my deputy chief who lives by there, who stopped in to have a look at it and started throwing buckets of water from a rain barrel on it and was able to knock it down until we got there, but it would have been another run. So
wow, that's crazy.
I think it's a Chinese proverb that says, may you live in interesting times, but
I'll call the meeting back to order. I think it's 2:34 and sort of get a mini report before the report here, but we'll turn it over to our fire chief, Austin.
Yes, no worries, Mayor and Council. Good afternoon. Pretty quick and painless report as far as mine goes. 49 emergency calls on the month, which ties us for March and April, or February and March were both about the same. So really pushing with that 50% or 50 calls per month number. I think that's kind of the new reality we are living in. We are seeing an increase in the number of COVID positive calls, or at least assumed COVID positive calls in our community. And that continues actually today. So hopefully we can, as a province, we can get that managed and get stuff out of control. As far as statistically, nothing too surprising there. And I guess I'll pause my report just to see if you have any questions as far as the statistics go.
Any questions?
Okay, hearing none. We're meeting with the North Corn Fire Chiefs here this evening just to talk about a few different things. Our grass fire season came quickly to a halt, but it's still dry out there and the trains keep moving, things like that. So we're just getting all on the same page. So we're singing the same song from the same songbook. And as you know, our vaccination clinic is still stood down here at the fire hall. That's we're back to that. They're ready to stand it up in 48 hours notice. We just need the 48 hours notice. So I don't have any information as far as what will be offered, when it will be offered. I can tell Mayor and Council though that today was a very busy day for people coming and banging on the door and phoning the fire hall, because with no vaccine clinic in the region, whether it's Saskatoon or Warman, it's I think there's still a demand there. So hopefully we can meet that demand and kind of get on with it here. So, have any questions?
Any question, Councillor C?
One quick question with relation to the vaccine clinic being closed, is that because it's still set up and it's still occupying a couple of days at the fire hall, is the SHA still, paying the rent, if you will, on having the fire hall ready and available with a moment's notice?
Yep, 100%. So every day that they're just in a stood down but ready to go mode. So every day since the end of March there, when they had everything in place, every one of those days is a billable day for the city of Warman. Just they do. It's not as if we have our fire hall back in and have no presence here from SHA. We do have the 2 bays set aside and that EMO room and stuff like that. So, and I can also advise Mayor and Council with last week with first responders being eligible for vaccinations. I can tell you that as far as our fire and emergency medical staff here, we're at about 66% of our staff is vaccinated. So I think we're at the point of where everybody who wants a vaccination has got one. So that's pretty encouraging.
That's great news. Any other questions or comments? Chief Austin. Seeing none, have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
We will move down to RCMP. Staff Sergeant Thomas.
Your worship, he may not be on the phone yet. We might have to go back to him. I think he was thinking around 3 o'clock.
Okay.
We usually take.
Okay, no problem. That was a pretty good estimate on Chief Austin's talk, but it didn't work out this time. We will move down to our and as soon as he comes, just let me know and we can pop in. We'll down to our EMO, and I know that Adrian is not on, but if there's any questions, I think we can pass them on to City Manager Smith, and he will forward them to Adrian. Any questions or comments? Councillor Seed.
Just one comment that I'd like some clarification on, and I can also send the email if Bob wishes over to Adrian, but it's my understanding here that we were looking to contact Osler regarding storing our second box of vital information. It's my understanding that that was actually done already in previous years. This may be just to update it, but I just wanted to confirm before we ask them if they can store it, that we should maybe check to make sure that it's just an update to the original one, unless I'm misunderstanding something there.
I can certainly clarify that, so you can leave that in my hands, but I don't believe it actually has been done in previous years. I think there's always been thought of doing it. So we've had two, let's say, go bags ready for if we had to move from our EOC to another location. And so we have two ready boxes. And the idea was to move one of those boxes to Osler. And I think that's been on the list of things to do for probably the last couple of years. But I know Adrian has been focusing on making sure that it gets there. So that's why he put it in his report.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the clarification.
Other questions? Bob to pass on? Okay, we will move down then to economic development and Brendan Gasmo.
Thank you. Good, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Kind of my report, I guess a lot of it will come out of it will be as my go ahead here is just the strategic planning. I want to thank everyone for that session, and just I think for all of us here in administration, just the kind of the direction. So I'm excited to start working on that, and look forward to presenting that next committee of the whole. Recently, the RFP for the $7,500 revitalization grant was sent out on the 1st, and I've listed the 5 businesses that are a request for proposal. So that closes April 30th at 3 p.m. So again, should have more of an update in May. And then as far as just the inquiries on the day-to-day, it's been encouraging on the phones from a standpoint of people looking for places that are available for rent, or just what the city can do, the different incentives from the business tax incentive and what we can do. So those are inquiries, and I have a few meetings this week regarding some of those inquiries, and just continuing to walk with them through those inquiries. But I guess on the other side, and I'm sure a few of you councillors, our council have come across, but I guess with that encouraging sign, there's also the other side where there's been a lot of, inquiries across my desk as far as what's happening. If we were getting anything as far as the new restrictions next week. I think they're in effect till the 26th. So they're just, businesses are reaching out to see if there's anything as far as will they be coming down with harsher restrictions. So I think there's a bit of worry there, obviously, with the variant, as there is understandable from a business owner standpoint. So that's something, monitoring the case levels, but also as vaccines continue to roll out, and fingers are crossed, and I'm, willing to obviously work with those businesses. So if you guys hear anything, obviously pass it my way. I look forward to working with those businesses and in these trialing times. I know light at the end of the tunnel, but it's still some cause for concern for some of those businesses. Things that are just on my radar, obviously the census numbers are going to be huge for our department, just to know, for documentations for promotions with trade shows as Wobie and next year's home styles, things like that, as well as just for just internally for us to have in-house. And like you said, just maybe numbers for exactly what Councillor Seed was talking about, but to being able to track, just the growth and where things are at. Like I said, the RFP closes on the 30th. Continued incubator research. So that's kind of something I've picked up. I know that was kind of started a little bit by Josh Wells prior to his departure. And then it's kind of been a recurring theme, both from the chamber, and then I know that it came up at our strat plan session. So that's something I'm digging into currently, and just seeing the options that are available and where we can take that and kind of hopefully bring that to fruition for our department and for the city. And then I know I've been in contact with Mayor Filipchuk, and we have a few different business visits this week, but it's kind of that fine line of some businesses want to see you, and I know we don't want to make a huge habit of increasing contacts during these times until we see how things go in the next few weeks. But just try to network when safe to do so. And I know there's more ways than just in person, but I know after the year we've had, it's always nice to put a face to a name, especially with me being new. And then I'm sure you guys heard in the media release that we have a new executive director for the Prairie Sky Chamber and Commerce for May 1st, Debbie Brown. She comes from Regina. She has family in the area, so she'll be coming up and wants to move closer to home. So Jamie talked very highly of Debbie, so look forward to work alongside her. So I'll be continuing those business task force meetings and kind of spearheading them with Dylan out of Martinsville to continue to work to help businesses through these times. And then, as Mayor Filipchuk would know as well, we have our regional committee meeting tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to see what comes out of that meeting. It's always good to connect with coworkers and, or somewhat coworkers or counterparts. So that's kind of what my report. There's nothing, too in depth there, but I'm hoping in May it can give you more concrete and be more comfortable in the role to maybe provide more numbers and statistics for council and mayor.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Seed?
Thank you, Mayor Filipchuk. I just noticed in the finance report as well, and I don't expect specific information with regards to this at this particular meeting, but I would like to see what we plan on going forward is that it shows that we were at something 62% or 64% of the budget for economic development, and what we have proposed to this point was being used. And I thank you for your report. I think it's the most detailed one I've seen yet from you. And I appreciate that you're getting into the role and kind of getting more and more information and being able to disseminate a lot more of that to council. And it all looks really, really good. I would like to see some information going forward as to kind of what the plan is to be able to ramp up a little bit. We had quite the lull there without an economic development officer. We're all excited that you're in the position now, and there's definitely some allocation for funds for that. So I'd like to see if there's any, even if it's just an email that you send to council for us to take a look at. I'd really like to see what some of the plans are going forward as part of that budget allocation and how you intend to utilize it to promote some more economic development within the city, because it's certainly something that we're all behind, and I think we've got some ground to make up for, but I would certainly like to see what your plans are for doing that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Ramage.
Thanks very much, Mayor Filipchuk. And thank you for your report, Brennan. Again, quite detailed, and it's good to see the increasing amount of detail in this. Couple questions I had. One on that SINP file. I understand the city was part of sending a letter making some recommendation for some improvements. Was that through the business task force in collaboration with Martinsville and the chamber?
Yeah, so originally that was the plan. It was kind of spearheaded by Jamie, and she approached Dylan and myself just to bring to council. Martinsville decided not to go ahead with partaking in the letter. So it came from the city of Warman, Mayor Philip Chuck, and the Prairie Sky Chamber. And basically the recommendation to look at was just being on par with Saskatoon as far as an English requirement. Just because I think at the end of the day, just for all parties, I think it's the benefit of everybody to just have that language requirement on par with Saskatoon. So I can forward a copy of the letter to councillors. I know Mayor has seen it because he signed the letter, but I can forward it to you guys so that you have a detail of what was sent to the Minister of Immigration. So for Saskatchewan. So.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think that's an encouraging letter because at the end of the day, we're open for business to come. We want to see business succeed. And I see this recommendation as part of helping all the businesses succeed and working together. And if I understand correctly, the timing was, there was good timing on this as the government is looking for different improvement recommendations for this program, as due to COVID right now, the program isn't accepting any new applicants. So this was the time to advocate for any changes. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct. Yeah. About a month ago, City Manager Smith and myself, as well as with the business task force, sat down with Stuart Lowe, who's kind of one of the counterparts that kind of overlooks the program. And he's kind of the right hand to Clint Rebsky, who was one of the person we addressed the letter to. And yes, he was adamant about us sending the letter just with details, because I think that's one of the things that they're trying to improve with the program is just now they're not accepting anyone, like you said, Councillor Amber. So it was a perfect timing to, I guess, look at making change for them. So it was important that we send the letter now, or I guess just stay status quo. So.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the proactive approach to that. And I think that, like I said, will be a benefit for all our businesses. One last question before a statement would be, I see the big focus of your time is going to implement the strategy for your department once I imagine that there's agreed upon plan. Is that going to come out of the strategic planning session that we had, or how do you see that your strategy for your department rolling out?
Yeah, I think that's kind of, so I appreciate what Councillor Seed has said too, but I was really looking for the strategic planning because obviously I have, some things I'd like to see in my department that, can be implemented as far as the different, ways we can advertise as a city. But yes, predominantly that's what I just was looking for, I guess, direction from my department from the new council and our new mayor. I know mayor's been on council for quite a few terms, but I knew we had a new team, cohesive team that I wanted to see kind of the direction before I get too far in. And I think the timing of our strat plan session was really good. Not that it was based around me, but it was really good. It was pretty fresh into my role, so that now I know the direction somewhat of where you guys would like to see the city go, that I can kind of work that together. And I look forward to presenting that at a future meeting, I'm hoping in May. So yeah, look forward to sharing that with you.
Yeah, perfect. And that was just what I was going to ask is when you anticipated that you would have that plan together. But yeah, if it's May, that's fantastic. I guess just to finish up, I'd just like to take a moment and thank Jamie for all of the work that she's done with the Chamber of Commerce. She's been with them for a long time and has really been a steady hand guiding the chamber and helping them out. And I look forward to working with Debbie as she takes on that role. So. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions or comments? And I also noticed a little bit with the finance report too, that the reduction with the branding, the money there. So I'm sure some of those things are probably almost coming to an end. And as I hear every morning on Brent Loups about a statement from Warman, and that happens throughout the day, and those are great things. And I think that's why a lot of those images that we get with Warman are coming from those. So appreciate those, and as mentioned with the others, that those are things that we see continuing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to Aaron with communications.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. You have my report in front of you. Just a reminder to anyone who is interested in contributing to the Warman history book, please reach out to me and we can get something set up. I know a couple of you have already either submitted or talked to me already, so thank you very much. And as usual, I've supplied you with some social media stats for the month of March. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know.
Any questions or comments, Councillor C?
Thank you, Mayor Filipchuk. Aaron, thank you very much for the report. I really appreciate seeing kind of the posts that are gaining the most traction. A question that I had is that it looks like we're getting about 10% is a very high number of residents seeing the social media posts. It's something that I know, like in my business development, we focus on a lot, is how are we going to increase the clicks, so to speak, or increase that information. And I certainly understand that not everybody is on social media or Facebook specifically. I would be curious to hear at the next opportunity, with no specific date in mind, some of the strategies that you feel we could use as a group to implement, whether that's councillor sharing, whether that's regular updates at certain times or anything like that, but some strategies going forward that might promote some further engagement, because it seems to be a pretty steady line of what we're getting as far as engagement is concerned, short of a very hot topic, of course. But I would be curious to hear your thoughts in the future as to how we can work as a group to improve that. So more of a comment than a question at this point, but thank you.
Can I throw a question out to council?
Yes.
Is there an area that you feel is not being addressed? Like, we do a lot of things through social media, you know, service announcements or bylaw education pieces, or even lately with the fun posts about the kids cleaning up garbage. So it's like a wide variety that we cover, but I would love to know if you feel we're missing something important.
So any comments with that? And let's not kid ourselves. Controversy creates clicks, and the more controversial it is, and we see it with other media, you know, but sometimes the controversy, then there's a lot of explaining if you try and get those clicks. So we are information, we are that sounding board at times. So, and Councillor C.
Thank you, Mayor Filipchuk. Yeah, with a direct response to your question there, Aaron, I certainly hope that my comments are not intended as, or brought forth as, you know, something's not being done appropriately. That is not my my point or my intention by any stretch of the imagination. It's just more of what can we do to help engage the citizens a little bit more. And I'm really not trying to drive it in a certain direction. I'm really honestly looking for information. You're the expert on it. And I mean, we all laugh when we see a post that's got a signage out, you know, the edge of town. We put it on social media. It's in the Gazette. We pretty much walk down the street with balloons, and then people still say we didn't know about it. But I would really just be looking for some maybe creative ideas as to how we can perhaps help to engage the citizens a little bit more. So I just don't want you to take it as anything specifically that's not being done. Just looking for some fun ways that we can get out there a little bit more. Thank you.
Councillor Ramage.
Thank you, and I'd echo Councillor Seed's comments. I think in general it's a really good job and that's being done, and I think there's lots of information and stories that are being shared. It would be interesting to hear some ideas about expanding that reach. The only thing that I would wonder about including would be some things on on an economic development basis. We've seen a lot of growth. We've seen a lot of things happen in the community over the last even 5 years. And maybe there's an opportunity for some storytelling on some of our other successes to go along with the rest of the information that's being provided.
Great idea. Thank you.
Anything else? Questions or comments? Great. Thank you, Aaron. Okay. I guess, is Barry around? Our Staff Sergeant Thomas?
Yes, I am.
Great. We'll call you in then. We'll do the RCMP report. Everyone has a copy of that. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. You do make some comments after, which is always nice. It gives a little more insight, which is appreciated. Anything to add or any questions from council?
Nothing to really add. Like I said, every time I sit and do these, I try to tweak it. And I guess the only thing I did add is a lot of people inquired over the years about false alarms and how much time and effort it sometimes takes to attend these calls. So I threw that stat in there to add false alarm attendance, and you'd see for the month there was 11. So out of 126 calls for the month, 11 of them are the false alarm related, and we try to monitor them. And let's say if we have a business that end up, let's say we have 5 in a month or a high number, I will either send them a letter or go visit them in person, asking them to maybe check their alarm to ensure everything's up to date and there's no faults, because it can take us away from another emergency, if they're not kept up to date, so forth. So other than that, really nothing to add. And
excellent. Questions? Councillor C.
Well, definitely preempted my question with regards to the false alarm, so thank you for that. One notable item on the report that is definitely something that made me raise my eyebrows, and I understand we can't get into specifics, but looking that there is 2 missing persons cases reported within the city of Warman. Are these, as I guess not traditionally have been, but have been in the past, related to the, I'll just call it the center south of Warman, more likely than not?
No. That would be in the RM reports. So these stats, as requested when I first got here, are just addressing the city of Warman. So a missing person can be, a child not coming home from school at 4:00, and they call. Parents will call right away, and at 4:30 they'll call back and say they've located it. And so it's just a stat that's kept there. It can be an overdue traveler, not are expected to be home in Warman at 10:00 at night, and they didn't show up till midnight because they had a flat tire in the road. So those are the kind of stats that they're associated to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And then just leaving with a comment, and it's something I did have the opportunity to share with Staff Sergeant at our MP meeting, but I thought it was quite remarkable to have even my own 16-year-old son ask me what's going on with the RCMP in town, because you can't even speed through town anymore. So I think that's a great response, and appreciate that even the youth are starting to notice that the RCMP are out and on the street and being proactive. So I'd just like to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Great. Councillor Johnson.
Just looking at the dangerous driving, 1 caught, and then 6 drinking and driving and 6 charged. Do you anticipate that going up? Is that going to be higher with the nicer weather coming up soon, or are we higher than normal?
I would say, and I'll touch on the dangerous driving. I associate it to spring fever. So you're correct. As the weather gets nicer and we get in, and it's not, trust me, it's not just 16-year-olds. There's 42-year-old teenagers that like to spin the tires every once in a while as well. So it will peak up in the spring, and of course we'll try to stay on top of it and issue the appropriate warnings or fines. As far as the impaired drivers, I know I made comments on it on an in-house meeting there last month with the February stats. A lot of it can be attributed to COVID and the fact that a lot of the bars are closed at last call 10 o'clock, and either in Saskatoon or here. And so it's a higher number of, I guess, impaired drivers driving the streets between the hours at 10:30 and 11:30. So that's kind of the time limit that we find that we're hitting, and hence the rise not only in Warman, but we've also been seeing it in the rural areas as well as Martinsville. So instead of the 3-4 o'clock in the mornings when we used to get, was the common time, we tend to see it more later in the evening between the 10:30 and 11:30.
Councillor Peterson.
I just wanted to say that on Friday evening, Saturday morning, there was a call in our neighborhood here, and there was 4 cars that responded in very short order. I just wanted to thanks the staff sergeant for his members, quick response, and they took care of the situation. I know a lot of us, we are worried, and rightfully so, about things like speeding and traffic, issues around Warman. But with matters that with important matters of safety and that, our RCMP are here and they respond very quickly. And I want to thank you.
Again, appreciate that. Thank you very much. And like I've mentioned before, our people do care and are out there giving as much as they can. And granted, there are times when we're spread pretty thin, but especially on the weekends, because of our watch system and the way it works, we have really good coverage in our 2 major communities, and it pays dividends for sure.
Great. Councillor Ramage.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. Just a question about other provincial statutes. What might, and on a general basis, what might fall under that category?
Okay, just let me flip a few pages and I'll be able to tell you exactly. Group other provision. So it's things like Liquor Act, Child Welfare Act, littering, 911, health, COVID, Child Welfare, Coroners Act, like sudden deaths, family relations, like family court orders. Mental health is a huge number in that one as well. Trespassing. Those are pretty much, in a nutshell, what the other provincial statutes encompass.
Okay. Actually, and thank you very much. I'm going to say that was quite impressive. That the response was just, here, let me flip a couple pages, and you have that kind of detailed information. That's fantastic. So really appreciate that. I guess under assist general public, same kind of question. They seem to be some of the higher categories. So what's under the general public category?
Yeah, pretty much around the same thing here again.
Okay.
That's the reason why I make up my own version of the report, because the actual ones that get printed off our system is very hard to read, and so it's got common police activities. So it's like abandoned vehicles, suspicious persons, the false alarms I took out of it, but items lost and found. Breach of the peace, and basically assisted, as simple as somebody calling asking for directions or asking a question. If they call our telecoms, they generate a file right away. So they'll call after hours when one of the girls aren't in the office, and Regina generates a file, and we have to score it to something. So it has to be assist general public if it's just a question or an inquiry.
Okay, awesome. Again, thank you very much. And I think just as my final comments on it is, the impaired driving seems to be a continuing issue, as you mentioned, in a variety of areas. But in terms of the city of Warman, I think this would be something that we need to be really careful and keep on top of, like it appears your team has been. So appreciate that.
Well, again, thank you. And again, it takes a community as well. So, you know, the reporting of same, the calls of suspicious drivers, and I know Councillor Seed called in one there last month, and that led to, you know, someone that rolled in the ditch and was charged with dangerous driving and impaired. And yeah, sometimes we just need the heads up because, like I say, it's a big enough area where we can't be there all at once, but it's community participation and helping us do our job that makes our job a little easier sometimes.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much, Staff Sergeant Thomas. A very positive report, and again, working together as a community, this looks like great progress. So thank you very much.
Okay, appreciate it. And then, like I said before, looking forward to doing this in person sometime soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. So the next meeting will be sorry. Okay, the next meeting will be Monday, May 17th. We looking now for a motion to go in camera to discuss RCMP. Sorry, I jumped down there to the RCMP strategic planning. Motion, please, Councillor Seed.
I'd like to make the motion that council move to an in-camera meeting to discuss the RCMP strategic planning meeting.
Seconder, Councillor Beck. All those in favor? Carried. So I think everybody will turn their cameras off except for City Manager Smith and our city clerk. Or not just turn the cameras off, we'll log out. Once we have confirmation from our city clerk, we will continue. So you can pull up that report if you have it. Well, you do have it. I just need to pull it up.